Welcome to the following Parenting Special Needs Magazine podcast. I'm Shantae, the founder and publisher of Parenting Special Needs Magazine. We created this podcast to uplift, educate, and celebrate you. We're so glad you're here, so let's get started.
Exercise is a life skill. Actually, I might go as far as to say exercise might be the most important life skill. See, as a parent of a child with special needs, we are so busy with appointment after appointment, medications, therapy, IEPs, school meetings, hospital visits, behavior challenges, even interactions with police. We kind of run out of the time and the mind space to remember that exercise or simply just movement is one of the most important health interventions. In the typically developed community, we know all about the benefits of exercise, whether it's physically from muscle development, mobility, weight management, sleep, improved cardiovascular health. And then on the mental health side, reduction of anxiety, regulation of emotions, improved self-esteem, brain function, energy, reduction of disease. It just sort of goes on and on. And we know all these things. They're well studied. But we find it difficult ourselves to even exercise, let alone force our children with special needs to quote unquote exercise. So we're going to change that today. Today, you're going to learn the ABCs of motivation and how to motivate your child with special needs to exercise. My name is Keegan Johnson. I'm a co-founder, along with my son Dante, who has special needs, of Let's Go Fitness, which is an online fitness and career community for people with special needs. So how did we get started? Before we get into the ABCs of motivation, let me just take you back to the time that we all remember, which is during the pandemic. And this is really when we got started. Like everybody else, we're trying to figure out what we're going to do when we're all stuck at home. And my son Dante, who is a teenager at that time, who has Prader-Willi Syndrome. And for those of you that don't know about Prader-Willi Syndrome, when we got the diagnosis, the geneticist said, this is a syndrome that's kind of perfectly designed to make sure this individual becomes morbidly obese. So kind of the banner issue is a lot of times they are always hungry. They just don't really get full to the extent that, they're kind of foraging for food. But even on top of that, they have growth delays, they have low muscle tone, they have cognitive challenges, a lot of increased anxiety, and the list just sort of goes on and on. It's a developmental disability. So during this time in the pandemic, we're trying to figure out what we're going to do. We actually had an uncle came over, but when we were allowed to still have visitors. And he asked if he could borrow some weights. He wanted to start working out. So he said, sure, why don't you borrow some weights? My son Dante was there. And as he was standing there, we just sort of took the opportunity. We said, hey, your uncle's going to start working out. What if you, pick up the weight and try and do a bicep curl? So we showed him how to do it. It was a 5-pound weight. He did the exercise. We cheered a lot, really excited for him. And he was like, oh, that's kind of cool. So then we actually said, hey, do you want to work out online with your cousin? So he actually really respected his cousin. So it was really just spending some time with his cousin he was excited about. And he said, sure. So he decided to work out with his cousin online. And one day became 2 days, became 3 days. We had a little bit of trial and error to sort of figure out what was working. And as we progressed, he kind of got a little bit addicted to it. And I'm going to tell you how we did that in a sec, but it got to the point where he was actually coming in the morning at like 6:30 in the morning and say, hey, Dad, I'm ready to work out. And my wife and I are like, hey, we need a little bit more sleep. We're not ready for that. So it was kind of crazy. Now, at the same time, before this, my wife and I, we've done some work raising money in the Prader-Willi Syndrome community. So there was people online. And as we started sharing the story that, hey, Dante's working out, he's done a couple workouts in a row. He's starting to go up in weights from 5 pounds to 10 pounds. Some of the parents actually messaged us and said, hey, Dante's working out. I hear it's going well. Can my son or daughter work out with him? And we said, sure. Yeah, go ahead and work out with him. So he started working out with a few more of his friends online. And before we know it, he'd actually worked out over 100 days in a row. to the point that we were actually telling him, hey, you got to take a break. But as he worked out, he's in the high school age. And this is when I guess something special happened. So for any of you parents out there who have a son or daughter who's in the high school age, you know that as you start to get to the end of high school, it starts to become a really scary time. Because when you're in the high school system, you have structure, you have teachers, caring adults, you have sort of a built-in social group. And then all of a sudden you leave high school and all of that's gone. On top of that, now you got to worry about some sort of job, financially, how are things going to work? Never mind sort of trying to figure out an overall sort of meaning to put with your life. And so Dante was in the high school through this COVID phase, and we're trying to figure out how we're going to pull this all together. I know my wife was very, very concerned about this. And Dante started to ask about it. Hey, what am I going to do after high school? What's this going to look like? And so we kept just telling him for a long time, we always just told him, you know what, just focus on helping people. Focus on helping people and everything else will take care of itself. So Dante had been working out. He'd been working out with some of his friends online. He'd been helping them. And then he came to me one day and he said, Dad, if I'm helping these people, what sort of job is that? And I said, oh, well, that's a fitness trainer. And he said, and this is kind of amazing, but he said, is being a fitness trainer a good job? And I said, it's a great job. And I'll never forget this because then he said, I think I want to be a fitness trainer. And so that was kind of the moment when Let's Go Fitness got founded, because I started thinking, well, he wants to be a fitness trainer. You know, we actually need to create something so that he can be successful as a fitness trainer. And then we launched Let's Go Fitness. So Let's Go Fitness is really an online fitness and now really a careers community. And the purpose is really to create an entirely new career path for individuals with special needs as an online fitness trainer. And as that's sort of grown, right now we actually run online fitness classes primarily for schools. And these classes are typically in special needs classes, but sometimes we're teaching typically developed kids as well. And the real key is all of these classes are led by someone like Dante, who's a trainer who has special needs, as well as a certified fitness coach who is typically developed. And this allows us to apply that or provide that representation. It allows the students in the class to see a trainer that they can relate to leading the class. And it allows us to actually hire these individuals with special needs to teach these classes. And I mean, if you want to hear surprise, you should listen into some of these calls that I have when I'll call some of the directors of special education at the schools or the school districts and let them know that we actually want to hire their students or their graduates with special needs. And they say, you know, no one ever calls us saying they want to hire these students. And it's pretty exciting what our trainers have been able to do. And when you see the trainers, that the purpose that they've been given in leading these classes, it's kind of special. So how do we get back to motivating our individuals with special needs to exercise? Something that's very challenging for all of us. So this comes back to, and this is not something that we developed. It's actually well documented. It's the theory of self-determination that really breaks down the three necessary components for being motivated for anything. So whether this is exercising, whether this is for a career, whether this is for anything that you want to do or your children want to do, there's really sort of three fundamental drives that all of us are looking for. And if we find that in a certain area, then we're motivated to do that. So we can get into the difference between motivation, discipline, and habits. We don't need to touch on that too much, because if we can supply these three components, the ABCs of motivation, then we create the habits and develop the discipline to be successful. So with all that, what are those three that we're going to talk about? So the ABCs are: A is autonomy, B is belonging, and 3 is competence. And if we can supply these, we can motivate our children with special needs to work out. So what's autonomy? Well, autonomy is really just being able to chart our own course, being able to make our own decisions. And I think you'll relate with me is that we all just feel a little bit more motivated when we can have that level of control to say, hey, I chose to do this. This is what I want to do. And what we find is so often this is taken away from our children with special needs. They don't get a lot of autonomy, a lot of choice in their life. It's always, hey, here's the program, here's what you do. And that's done because they may have challenges making decisions and structure. But the more autonomy we can give them in a safe environment, the more motivation they'll have. So as an example, in the fitness environment, you and I may decide that, hey, I want to work out by going to the gym. You may decide you want to work out by working out at home, right? So now we've actually been able to make that choice, but a lot of times that's taken away from our children with special needs. So we'd like to try and build that choice into everything we're doing, right? So would you like to do a side row or a front row, right? So we're going to bring those exercises right down to that individual. Now they're having a sort of preferred choice, but they're still actually going ahead to exercise. So the more we can bring that autonomy right down to that individual level, the more success we're going to have in building this program. And then we start to build it up, where you see now Dante is actually designing his whole workouts. So he's learned all the different exercises, all the pieces, but he'll sit down for his Saturday workout and he will actually plan out, here's the different exercises that he's going to do. Now he has that autonomy, he has that control, and now he's super motivated because he can actually demonstrate that tangibly in his life. So that's the autonomy piece. Next, B. This is belonging, and this is huge. So we all want to, love to, need to be a part of a group. We want to be a part of something that's bigger than ourselves, right? So this is a lot of the whole idea of if there's a mentor that we look up to who's exercising and we can belong to that group, that's going to help us. One of the best things that we can do as a parent is actually exercising ourselves, because then all of a sudden our children are going to be like, yeah, that's what our family, that's what our group does. And the more we're surrounded by not just one individual, but a group that values exercise, then our values are going to change to be the same as that group. But here's the other key piece that's missed in the belonging phase is not only do we need to belong or be a part of a group, and obviously in this case, it's belong to a group that values and does exercise, but the key is that group needs to need us. Because if I'm kind of a part of a group, but they don't really miss me, I don't feel like they need me, then I don't really have that complete belonging. And so that's why when we're doing our workouts, absolutely at the beginning, the first thing is we actually introduce ourselves. We get to know each of the individuals, each of the students in the class. They actually have this trainer who has special needs who they can actually relate to. But we also make sure that we then incorporate each of those individuals into the workout to the level that they're able. So as an example, we love to have individual students start to count the exercises. Hey, Mike, would you like to count bicep curls today? And so all they're doing is they're counting to 10, but that counting means that they're actually now a part of the exercise. And there are a lot of ways that belonging can be worked into the whole exercise, whether it's counting, whether it's leading, whether it's deciding what some of the next exercises are going to be, or even just chatting in between the workouts to let that individual know that they're part of this group and that the group needs them to be a part of that group. So then we come to C. C is competence. And competence is really just being good at something. We love to do things that we're good at, and we'd love to know that we're getting better at something. And this is a universal desire. The challenge is a lot of times when we come to individuals with special needs, when we come to exercise, what we typically think may be a simple thing to do, where we get up and we show an exercise and you got to do it, with the proper quote unquote form, and you have to do it to 10 reps with, 25 pounds. That may be just very difficult for this individual to do. So what we want to do is break it down to the smallest level. And if you remember the story, the first time when Dante worked out, he was literally doing one bicep curl with 5 pounds. But once he completed that, he was then celebrated, quote unquote, within the group. And this was actually recognized as a major accomplishment. So of course he's going to feel good about that. So the question is, can we then break it down to the smallest level of quote unquote achievement for each of the individuals in the group, celebrate them at the level that we're at, and then track that progress. So now it's 1 bicep curl. Now it's 5 bicep curls. Now it's 10 bicep curls. Whatever that progression is, celebrate that progression all along the way. And if you can now create an environment that provides this autonomy, provides this belonging, and provides this competence and the recognition of competence, you will find individuals that are addicted to exercise. So what has this done for Dante? So yes, he worked out over 100 days in a row. He now works out every week, multiple times without any prompting. And this isn't us reminding him or pushing him to do that. As I mentioned before, he's actually designing his own workouts, and he's had the physical improvements. He went from lifting 5 pounds to using 25-pound weights. His mobility has increased. He actually is one of the only people I know that actually loves doing burpees. He's able to move around. He's able to be a lot more active, whether it's playing pickleball and stuff like that, because he's actually exercising on a consistent basis. But the physical benefits for us anyway really kind of just seem to be the beginning. On the mental side, his anxiety is reduced. He sleeps better. And then on top of that, as he's now graduating from high school, he actually knows that he has a job. He's going to be working as a Let's Go fitness trainer, and he's actually excited about the next phase of his life. He has meaning. So I know I'm super proud of him and what he's accomplished, and I'm excited to see where he can take this. He finished our first level of certification. And I know he keeps asking me, hey, Dad, when is the level 2 certification running? So he's going to be taking that level 2 certification class this morning and progressing in his career as a typically developed individual at his own pace. And he's really excited about that. So what advice would I give to a parent of a child with special needs? I guess the first thing is just your child can exercise. The exercise is going to look different than everybody else, but really once you're moving your body, you're exercising. And whatever that form is, that's the level that we're going to recognize success at. And your child can have fun exercising. It is actually fun to move your body in whatever way, shape, or form makes sense if you have the ABCs surrounding you. And how do you get started? Well, probably number one thing you can do as a parent is start exercising yourself. And I know there's probably a lot of people sort of rolling your eyes, but apply those ABCs to yourself. Find your own fun in moving your body in whatever way or shape, form that is. And if you apply these principles, you will be the one setting the best example for your son or the daughter. And that is probably the best thing that you can do. Outside of that, you can get in touch with us. You can get your school to sign up for Let's Go Fitness classes. And we'd love to welcome you and your school to our community. And just circling back, exercise is a life skill. It's probably the most important life skill. And we should all just get back to having fun moving our body.
Thank you all for being with us today. And in case no one has told you, you are doing a great job. Be good to you, and we'll talk to you soon.